I understand you'd like me to write just part one of the story in about 650 words, using simple and basic English in third-person style. Here's part one of the CEO in disguise story. Hashtag he's the CEO in disguise buying a truck. Then a customer's words stop him in his tracks. Hashtag part one. Michael Foster looked at his reflection in the mirror. Gone was the expensive suit. Gone was the designer watch. Gone was the perfect haircut that cost $200. Today, he wore old jeans with a small hole in one knee. He had on a faded blue t-shirt and a worn baseball cap. His normally clean-shaven face now had a 2-day beard. Perfect, he said to himself. No one will know who I am. Michael wasn't just any man. He was the CEO of Foster Motors, one of the biggest car companies in the country. His face was in business magazines. His company made billions of dollars every year. But today, he didn't want to be that Michael Foster. Today, he was just Mike, a regular guy looking to buy a truck. Michael had been doing this for 6 months now, going to different car dealerships pretending to be a normal customer. He wanted to see how salespeople treated regular people. Were they honest? Were they helpful? Did they try to trick customers? He had visited 7 of his own dealerships this way. Today was different. Today he was going to visit Trucktown, his biggest competitor. Remember, Michael told himself as he got into his old pickup truck, "You're just Mike who works construction. You know a little about trucks, but not too much. You have $30,000 to spend, not a penny more." The drive to Trucktown took 45 minutes. It was a huge dealership with hundreds of shiny trucks, lined up like soldiers. Big signs promised best DALs, and no one BETs our prices. Michael parked his old truck far from the entrance. He didn't want anyone to see the CEO of Foster Motors arriving in a 10-year-old pickup. As he walked across the lot, he noticed how salespeople watched him. They were like hawks looking for mice. A tall man in a bright blue suit started walking toward him, then stopped. The man turned and headed toward a couple getting out of a new Mercedes instead. Interesting, Michael thought. He took one look at my clothes and decided I wasn't worth his time. Michael kept walking, looking at trucks as he went. He knew every model, every engine option, and every feature by heart. But today, he pretended to be just looking around. Finally, a salesman approached him. The man's name tag said Dave. He was young, maybe 25, with slicked back hair and a cheap suit. "Can I help you?" Dave asked. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm looking for a work truck," Michael said, making his voice sound rougher than normal. "Something reliable." Dave looked Michael up and down. "Budget models are over this way," he said, not asking what Michael could afford. They walked to a row of basic trucks at the back of the lot. These were the cheapest models with few features. "This one's $25,990, Dave said, pointing to a white truck with plastic seats and manual windows. Basic but dependable. Michael looked at the truck. At his company, this model would sell for $23,500. Trucktown was overcharging by more than $2,000. "What about that blue one?" Michael asked, pointing to a nicer truck nearby. "That's probably out of your price range," Dave said quickly. "It's $42,000. "I'd still like to look at it," Michael insisted. Dave sighed. "Sure, but I think we should focus on what you can afford." As they walked to the blue truck, Michael noticed another salesman showing a well-dressed man every feature of an expensive truck, letting him sit inside and start the engine. 2 different customers, 2 different experiences, Michael thought. This is exactly why I'm here. He had no idea that in the next few minutes, he would hear words that would change his company forever. Dave opened the door of the blue truck with obvious reluctance. His movements were slow, as if he didn't want to waste time showing this truck to someone like Michael. "This is the Frontier XLT, Dave said flatly. "It has the V8 engine, leather seats, and a towing package." Michael ran his hand along the smooth dashboard. He knew this truck well. His company made a similar model called the Trailblazer. He could tell this truck was overpriced by at least $3,000. "Can I sit inside?" Michael asked. Dave stepped back with a small sigh. "Go ahead." Michael climbed into the driver's seat. The leather felt soft and expensive. He gripped the steering wheel and looked at all the buttons and screens. This was a nice truck, exactly the kind his company prided itself on making well. "How many miles per gallon does it get?" Michael asked, knowing the answer but testing Dave's knowledge. Pretty good mileage," Dave said vaguely. "Better than most trucks its size." Michael nodded. Dave didn't know or didn't care enough to give the right answer. The correct answer was 22 miles per gallon in the city and 27 on the highway. This was basic information any good salesperson should know. "What about the warranty?" Michael asked. "Standard warranty," Dave said, checking his phone quickly. 3 years or 36,000 miles. Again, this was wrong. The warranty was 5 years or 60,000 miles. Either Dave was lying to make the deal seem worse, or he truly didn't know his products. Michael got out of the truck. "Mind if I look under the hood?" Dave looked annoyed now. "Look, this truck is probably not what you're looking for. It's for serious buyers. The white one I showed you first is more appropriate." Michael felt his face get warm. As CEO of Foster Motors, no one ever spoke to him this way. People treated him with respect. They listened to his questions. They never assumed he couldn't afford something. "I'd still like to look under the hood," Michael said firmly. Dave reluctantly popped the hood. As Michael bent over the engine, he overheard Dave talking to another salesman nearby. "Waste of time," Dave muttered. "Guy probably can't even afford the monthly payments on the base model. Look at those clothes." The other salesman laughed. "I get guys like that all the time. They just want to pretend they can buy something nice." Michael pretended not to hear. He checked the engine carefully, noting how the competitor's design was different from his company's trucks. Across the lot, he noticed an older man in clean but simple clothes looking at trucks. This man was getting very different treatment. A saleswoman was showing him every feature, answering all his questions with respect and enthusiasm. Interesting, Michael thought. Same clothes, different salespeople, totally different experience. As Dave led him back to the cheaper trucks, Michael spotted the dealership manager watching from the window of his office. The manager was a man Michael had met at industry events, though they had never been introduced properly. Michael pulled his cap lower, not wanting to be recognized. "So about this white one," Dave said, clearly trying to end the interaction quickly. "We could do $25,500 if you're ready to buy today. Still overpriced by $2,000, Michael noted mentally. "What about financing?" Michael asked. "We'd need to check your credit," Dave said with doubt in his voice. "Interest rates for, your situation would probably be around 12%. Michael almost laughed out loud. His company offered rates starting at 3.9% to almost everyone with decent credit. This salesman was trying to make maximum profit from someone he thought wouldn't know better. Just then, something unexpected happened. The older man Michael had noticed earlier walked over to them, a bright smile on his weathered face. "Excuse me," the man said politely. "I couldn't help noticing you're looking at trucks too." Michael turned to look at the older man who had approached them. He was about 65, with gray hair and kind eyes. He wore clean but simple clothes, work pants, a plaid shirt, and sturdy boots. His hands were rough and calloused, showing years of hard work. "Yes, I'm looking at trucks," Michael said with a friendly smile. "Have you found one you like?" Dave shifted uncomfortably, clearly annoyed by the interruption. "Sir, I'm with a customer right now." The older man nodded politely. "Sorry about that. I just wanted to say these trucks are overpriced by about $3,000. I've been to 3 dealerships today." Michael tried not to smile. This stranger had just confirmed exactly what he had been thinking. Dave's face turned red. "Sir, I don't think." "The name's Gerald," the older man said, extending his hand to Michael. "Gerald Thompson." "Mike." Michael replied, shaking Gerald's hand. "Nice to meet you." Dave looked between them, clearly frustrated. "Mr. Thompson, I believe Sarah is helping you. Maybe you should return to her." Gerald smiled calmly. "Sarah is a good saleswoman. Honest. Respectful. Doesn't treat me different because of my clothes." He looked directly at Dave. "Not like some people here." Michael could see Dave's face getting redder. This was getting interesting. "I've been buying trucks for 40 years, Gerald continued. "Used to own a construction company. Just sold it last year for a nice amount. Now I'm retired, looking for a good truck to take fishing." Michael nodded. "Construction is hard work. You must know a lot about trucks." "Sure do," Gerald said proudly. "And I know when someone's trying to cheat me. This young man here," he nodded toward Dave, "started showing me the cheap trucks until he saw me take out my wallet to check something. It had a picture of me with the governor getting a business award. Suddenly, I was worth his time." Dave looked like he wanted to disappear. "Mr. Thompson, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Gerald said firmly. "I saw how you were treating this man here, same way you treated me at first, judging by clothes instead of the person." Michael was amazed. This stranger had just exposed exactly what he had come here to find out: how salespeople treated different customers based on how they looked. "Young man," Gerald said to Dave, "my daddy taught me something important. The way you treat the person who you think can do nothing for you shows who you really are." Those words hit Michael like a bolt of lightning. In all his years running his company, he had never heard such a simple, powerful truth. This was exactly the problem he had been trying to solve. Dave looked at his shoes, clearly embarrassed. "I should check if my manager needs me," he said, and quickly walked away. Gerald turned to Michael with a smile. "Sorry about that. I don't usually step in like that, but I can't stand seeing people treated poorly." "No need to apologize," Michael said sincerely. "What you said was important, about how people treat others who they think can't help them." Gerald nodded. "My daddy was a wise man. Worked hard all his life. Never had much money, but he was rich in wisdom." "Would you mind if I wrote that down?" Michael asked, pulling out his phone. "What your father said. It's something I'd like to remember." "Help yourself," Gerald said, looking pleased. "Like I said, I'm Gerald Thompson. Used to own Thompson Construction. Built half the shopping centers in this county." Michael typed the quote into his phone. "The way you treat the person who you think can do nothing for you shows who you really are." These words would soon change everything at Foster Motors. But first, Michael wanted to know more about this wise stranger. "Gerald," Michael said, "would you like to get a coffee across the street? I'd like to hear more about what you've learned from buying trucks all these years." The small coffee shop across from Trucktown was quiet and cozy. Michael and Gerald sat by the window with steaming cups of coffee. From there, they could see the dealership's bright flags waving in the wind and salespeople moving between shiny trucks like bees in a garden. "Thanks for the coffee," Gerald said, adding a spoonful of sugar to his cup. "Nice to meet someone who listens." Michael smiled. "Thank you for speaking up back there. Not many people would have done that." Gerald shrugged his shoulders. "I've seen it too many times. Good folks treated badly because they don't wear fancy clothes or drive expensive cars." He took a sip of coffee. "In my 40 years running my business, I learned that the richest people often dress the plainest." "That's very true," Michael agreed, thinking of several billionaires he knew who wore simple clothes and drove ordinary cars. "So Mike," Gerald said, "you looking to buy a truck for work?" For a moment, Michael considered keeping up his act, but something about Gerald made him want to be honest. Not completely honest, but more honest than he had been with Dave. "Actually," Michael said, "I work for a car company. I visit dealerships to see how they treat customers." Gerald's eyebrows went up. "Like a secret shopper?" "Something like that." Michael nodded. "I want to see if salespeople treat everyone with respect, or if they judge people by how they look." Gerald laughed, a warm, deep sound. Well, I think you got your answer today. I certainly did, Michael agreed. Tell me more about your construction business. Gerald's eyes lit up. Thompson Construction. Started with just me and a pickup truck 40 years ago. By the time I sold it last year, we had 200 employees and built the biggest projects in the state. He pulled out his wallet and showed Michael a picture of a tall office building. That's our last big project. 27 floors. My retirement present to myself. Michael was impressed. That's amazing, Gerald. You must be very proud. I am, Gerald said. But I'm more proud of how we did business. Fair prices. Quality work. Treated people right. He put his wallet away. Never forgot where I came from. My first job was digging ditches for $5 an hour. Michael nodded. He had started at the bottom too, working in his father's small car repair shop before going to college and eventually taking over what had become Foster Motors. What about you? Gerald asked. What's your story? Michael chose his words carefully. I started at the bottom too. Worked my way up. Now I help make sure customers get treated right. Good man, Gerald said, raising his coffee cup in a small salute. We need more of that. Michael leaned forward. Gerald, what you said back there about how people treat others who they think can't do anything for them, that really hit home. Would you mind telling me more about what your father taught you? Gerald's face softened at the mention of his father. My daddy was a janitor at the local high school. Never made much money, but he was the richest man I knew in what matters. He paused, remembering. He told me to watch how people treat waiters, janitors, and store clerks. That shows their true character. He was right, Michael said softly. One time, Gerald continued, when I was about 12, we were at a restaurant. A man in an expensive suit was rude to our waitress. After the man left, Daddy said to me, "That man may have money, but he's the poorest man in this room." That stuck with me all my life. Michael felt something powerful in Gerald's words. This was the wisdom he had been looking for to transform his company. Daddy also said, Gerald went on, that a business that treats only rich customers well is a business that's forgotten what matters. Every person who walks through your door deserves respect. Michael nodded. Your father was a wise man, Gerald. He sure was, Gerald agreed. I think he'd like you, Mike. You listen. That's rare these days. As they finished their coffee, Michael made a decision. He wouldn't reveal who he really was, but he would use Gerald's wisdom to change Foster Motors forever. After saying goodbye to Gerald, Michael sat in his old pickup truck in the coffee shop parking lot. He didn't start the engine right away. Instead, he took out a small notebook and wrote down everything he had learned from Gerald. Every word of wisdom, every story about Gerald's father, every lesson about treating people with respect. This is exactly what Foster Motors needs, Michael said to himself. For years, Michael had worried about how customers were treated at his dealerships. Sales numbers were good, but customer satisfaction scores were dropping. Now he understood why. His salespeople were judging customers by their appearance, just like Dave had judged him today. Michael looked across the street at Truck Town. Dave was now talking to a customer in an expensive suit, smiling and giving his full attention. The same Dave who had barely looked Michael in the eye an hour ago. Time for a change, Michael decided. He drove back to his office building, parking in the underground garage where no employees would see him in his disguise. Using the private elevator to his top-floor office, he changed back into his normal clothes, an expensive gray suit, polished shoes, and his gold watch. Looking in the mirror, he saw Michael Foster, CEO of Foster Motors, once again, but he felt different inside. Gerald's words had changed something in him. Michael called his assistant. Janet, I need you to set up a company-wide meeting for tomorrow morning. Everyone needs to be there. Sales staff, mechanics, office workers, everyone. Yes, sir, Janet replied. Should I tell them what it's about? Just tell them it's important, Michael said. And Janet, could you find information on a construction company called Thompson Construction? The owner's name is Gerald Thompson. He recently sold the business. I'll get right on it, sir, Janet answered. Michael spent the rest of the day planning what he would say at tomorrow's meeting. He knew it would surprise everyone. Foster Motors had always focused on selling expensive cars to rich customers. The salespeople were trained to spot big spenders and give them special attention. But what about regular people? People like Gerald, who might not look rich but had worked hard all their lives. People who deserved respect, no matter what they wore or drove. The next morning, all 300 employees of Foster Motors gathered in the company's large meeting room. There was a buzz of nervous energy. The CEO rarely called everyone together like this. Michael stood at the front of the room, looking at the faces of his employees. Many had worked for him for years. They were good people, but somewhere along the way, the company had lost its way. "Good morning, everyone," Michael began. "Yesterday, I had an experience that changed how I see our company. I visited Trucktown, our biggest competitor. People looked surprised. Some whispered to each other. But I didn't go as Michael Foster, CEO," he continued. "I went as Mike, a regular guy in old jeans and a baseball cap looking to buy a truck." The room went completely quiet. Michael showed them a picture of himself in his disguise. "This is who I was yesterday. A normal customer with money to spend, but not dressed in expensive clothes." He described how Dave had treated him, the assumptions, the poor service, the attempts to overcharge him. "Then something amazing happened," Michael said. "I met a man named Gerald Thompson." Michael told them about Gerald, his construction company, his wisdom, and most importantly, his father saying about how you treat people who can't do anything for you. "Gerald said something I will never forget," Michael continued. "The way you treat the person who you think can do nothing for you shows who you really are." He let the words sink in. Some employees looked uncomfortable. Others nodded in agreement. "I realized," Michael said, his voice growing stronger, "that at Foster Motors, we've been doing exactly what Dave did to me. We've been judging customers by their appearance, giving better service to people in nice clothes, ignoring those who don't look wealthy." Michael paused, making eye contact with his sales manager, who shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Starting today," Michael announced, "that changes. I have a new plan for Foster Motors, and it starts with understanding what Gerald and his father knew. Every person who walks through our doors deserves the same respect, the same service, and the same honest treatment." The room was silent as everyone waited to hear what their CEO would say next. "Our new company policy is simple," Michael continued, looking around the room at his employees. "Every customer gets treated with the same respect and honesty. It doesn't matter what they wear, what car they drive, or how much money they seem to have." Robert Wilson, the sales manager, raised his hand. "But Mr. Foster, we need to focus on customers who can afford our higher-end models. That's where the profit is." Michael nodded, understanding this old way of thinking. "Robert, let me tell you about Gerald Thompson." He walked into Trucktown wearing old clothes and work boots. The salespeople thought he was poor. But do you know who Gerald really is? The room was quiet, everyone listening closely. "Gerald just sold his construction company for $30 million, Michael said, looking at the information Janet had given him that morning. "He built some of the biggest buildings in the state. He could buy any truck on that lot with cash. But because of how he looked, they treated him poorly at first." Surprised whispers spread through the room. "How many customers like Gerald have we lost over the years?" Michael asked. "People with money to spend who didn't get the respect they deserved because of how they dressed." No one had an answer. "Starting today, we're making big changes," Michael announced. "First, we're starting a new training program. Everyone who works with customers will learn how to give the same excellent service to everyone." He walked across the stage, his energy building. "Second, I'll be visiting all our dealerships regularly, in disguise. I'll be the customer in old jeans, or work clothes, or anything that doesn't look wealthy. And I expect to receive the same treatment as any other customer. Some employees looked nervous, others excited by the challenge. Third, we're changing our bonus system. From now on, customer satisfaction scores will count for 50% of your bonus, not just sales numbers. Robert Wilson frowned. Mr. Foster, this sounds nice, but will it work in the real world? Our competitors will still be focusing on the big spenders. Michael smiled confidently. Robert, that's exactly why this will work. While they're chasing the few customers in expensive suits, we'll be earning the loyalty of everyone else. He showed a slide with statistics. 80% of people in this country are regular, hardworking folks. They might not look rich, but they buy cars and trucks. They tell their friends and family where they got good service. They come back when they're treated well. The numbers made sense. People started nodding. Think about it, Michael continued. If we're the only dealership where everyone gets treated with respect, where salespeople don't judge by appearance, where honesty is guaranteed, who do you think people will tell their friends about? Sarah Chen, a young saleswoman, raised her hand. Mr. Foster, I love this idea. My parents came to this country with nothing. They worked hard, but were often treated poorly because of how they looked or their accent. I've always tried to treat every customer equally. Thank you, Sarah, Michael said warmly. That's exactly the attitude we need. He revealed the next slide, showing a new company slogan, Foster Motors, where everyone gets the VIP treatment. I'm also starting a mystery shopper program, Michael explained. People of all ages, backgrounds, and styles of dress will visit our dealerships and report back on how they were treated. The dealership with the best scores each month gets a bonus for every employee. The energy in the room was changing from doubt to excitement. People could see the potential in this new approach. One last thing, Michael said. Tomorrow, I'm going back to Trucktown, as myself this time. I want to meet Gerald again and thank him properly for teaching me such an important lesson. Lisa from marketing raised her hand. Mr. Foster, could we invite Gerald to be part of our new training videos? His story is so powerful. Michael smiled. That's an excellent idea, Lisa. In fact, I think Gerald might have a lot to teach all of us. As the meeting ended, employees left with a new sense of purpose. For years, they had been trained to spot serious buyers by their clothes or cars. Now they were being asked to see the value in every person who walked through their doors. Michael returned to his office, feeling more excited about the future of Foster Motors than he had in years. Gerald's words had not just stopped him in his tracks, they had changed the direction of his entire company. The next morning, Michael drove to Trucktown in his company car, a shiny black luxury sedan with the Foster Motors logo on the doors. This time, he wore his best suit, his expensive watch, and carried his leather briefcase. Today, he wasn't hiding who he was. When he pulled into the dealership parking lot, people noticed. Salespeople straightened their ties and smoothed their hair. The manager rushed out of his office. Michael Foster, CEO of their biggest competitor, was walking onto their lot. Mr. Foster, the manager, Bill Jackson, hurried over with his hand extended. What a surprise. What brings you to Trucktown today? Michael shook his hand firmly. Good morning, Bill. I'm looking for someone who was here yesterday. An older gentleman named Gerald Thompson. Bill looked confused. Gerald Thompson. I believe he was working with Sarah, one of our saleswomen. Did you know he just sold his construction company? Quite a successful businessman. Yes, I know, Michael said with a smile. Is he here today? Let me check with Sarah, Bill said, clearly wondering why Michael Foster was looking for one of their customers. While Bill went to find Sarah, Michael noticed Dave, the salesman from yesterday, staring at him with his mouth open. Dave clearly recognized him now and looked very worried. Michael gave him a small nod but didn't approach him. Sarah walked over, a young woman with a friendly smile. Mr. Foster, I'm Sarah Wilson. I was helping Mr. Thompson yesterday, but he didn't buy a truck yet. He said he was still deciding. Do you have his contact information? Michael asked. I'd like to speak with him. Sarah looked uncertain and glanced at her manager. It's important, Michael added. I'm not trying to steal your customer. This is about something else. Bill nodded to Sarah, and she gave Michael Gerald's phone number. Michael thanked them both and returned to his car. As he drove away, he could see the truck town staff gathered in a group, probably wondering why he had come. Michael called Gerald from his car. Mr. Thompson, this is Michael Foster, CEO of Foster Motors. We met yesterday, though I was calling myself Mike. There was a long pause on the other end. The fellow in the old jeans and cap. You're the CEO of Foster Motors. Yes, sir, Michael admitted. I was visiting Trucktown undercover to see how they treat customers, and I learned a very valuable lesson from you. Gerald chuckled. Well, I'll be. That's something. Mr. Thompson, I'd like to meet with you properly. Would you be available for lunch today? My treat. Call me Gerald, the older man said. And yes, I'd be happy to have lunch, but nothing fancy. I'm a simple food kind of man. They agreed to meet at a local diner that Gerald recommended. When Michael arrived, Gerald was already there, sitting in a booth by the window. He was wearing the same type of clothes as yesterday. Simple, clean, and practical. Gerald stood and shook Michael's hand. So you're the big boss. No wonder you were asking all those questions about customer service. I am, Michael said, sitting down across from him. But yesterday, you were the teacher and I was the student. They ordered lunch, hamburgers and fries for both of them. While they waited for their food, Michael explained his undercover visits and what he had learned. After meeting you, Michael said, I called a company meeting this morning. I'm changing how Foster Motors does business. From now on, every customer gets treated with respect, no matter what they look like or where. Gerald nodded approvingly. That's good to hear. Too many businesses forget that regular folks have money to spend too. Your words about how people treat those they think can't do anything for them. That hit me hard, Michael admitted. It was exactly what I needed to hear. Their food arrived, and they both took a moment to enjoy their hamburgers. I have a proposal for you, Gerald, Michael said after a while. I'd like you to help us with our new training program. Your story, your father's wisdom. It could help our employees understand what good service really means. Gerald looked surprised. Me? I'm just a retired construction man. You're much more than that, Michael said sincerely. You're someone who understands people, who knows the value of respect, who can tell when someone is being honest or fake. Well, when you put it that way, Gerald said with a smile. What exactly did you have in mind? Michael explained his plan. Gerald would come to Foster Motors once a week for the next month. He would share his experiences and his father's wisdom with the sales staff. Then, he would help train the mystery shoppers who would visit dealerships to check on customer service. We'll pay you as a consultant, of course, Michael added. Gerald thought for a moment. I don't need the money. But I like the idea of helping people learn to treat others right. My daddy would be proud to see his words making a difference. They shook hands across the table, sealing their agreement. One more thing, Michael said. Would you be interested in buying a truck from Foster Motors? I promise you'll get honest information and our best price. No games. Gerald smiled. Now that you mention it, I am still looking for that perfect truck for my fishing trips. 3 months later, Foster Motors was a different company. The changes Michael had made after meeting Gerald were working better than anyone had expected. On a sunny Tuesday morning, Michael stood in the main showroom of their biggest dealership. The place was busy with customers looking at cars and trucks. What made Michael smile was seeing how his salespeople were treating everyone. The woman in the expensive dress got the same friendly service as the man in paint-splattered work clothes. Good morning, Mr. Foster, said Robert Wilson, the sales manager who had doubted the new approach at first. Have you seen the latest numbers? Michael nodded. I have. They're impressive. Sales were up 24% compared to the same time last year. Even more importantly, customer satisfaction scores had jumped from 72% to 91%, the highest in the company's history. Gerald starting his session with the new hires in 10 minutes, Robert said. I think you'll want to see this one. Michael followed Robert to the training room. Through the glass door, he could see Gerald sitting at the front of the room. 20 new employees sat in chairs facing him, looking eager to learn. Let's listen for a bit, Michael suggested. They stood just outside the door where they could hear. Gerald was telling a story. Last week, a young man came into one of your dealerships. His clothes were old. His shoes had holes. The car he drove was at least 15 years old and making strange noises. The new employees listened carefully. Now, in the old days, Gerald continued, a salesperson might have ignored this customer or shown him only the cheapest cars. But Sarah, one of your top salespeople, treated him with respect. She asked about his needs, not his budget. She showed him cars in different price ranges. Gerald paused for effect. That young man was a software designer who had just sold his app for $2 million. He was still wearing his old clothes because he hadn't had time to shop. He drove away in your most expensive sports car and later sent his parents in to buy a luxury sedan. The new employees looked amazed. But here's the important part, Gerald said, leaning forward. Even if he hadn't been rich, he deserved that same respect. Every person who walks through these doors is a human being first, a customer second. Michael smiled. Gerald had become an excellent teacher. His simple, honest way of talking connected with people. There's one saying I want you all to remember, Gerald told the group. My daddy taught me this, and it's the heart of what Mr. Foster is trying to build here. The way you treat the person who you think can do nothing for you shows who you really are. Michael watched the new employees writing this down. It had become the unofficial motto of Foster Motors. Robert whispered to Michael, remember how I thought this wouldn't work in the real world? I've never been happier to be wrong. They walked away, leaving Gerald to finish his training session. Have you heard about Dave from Trucktown? Robert asked as they headed back to the showroom. No. What about him? Michael was curious. He applied for a job here last week, Robert said. Said he learned his lesson about judging customers after you visited their dealership. Said he wants to work somewhere that values treating people right. Michael raised his eyebrows. Did you hire him? I did. Robert nodded. Gerald interviewed him and said he deserves a second chance. He starts next Monday. Michael smiled. Even Dave was changing. In the showroom, Michael spotted a familiar face. It was Gerald, finished with his training session, talking with a young couple looking at family cars. Excuse me a moment, Michael said to Robert, and walked over to join them. Gerald smiled when he saw Michael. Mr. Foster, I was just telling these nice folks about your same price for everyone policy. The couple looked pleased. The woman spoke up. It's refreshing to know we're getting the same price as anyone else would. No hidden games. That's our promise, Michael assured them. Honest dealing with everyone. After the couple moved on with the salesperson, Gerald turned to Michael. That fishing truck you sold me is working out great, by the way. Took it to the lake 3 times last week. Michael grinned. I'm glad to hear it. You know, Gerald said thoughtfully, my daddy would be mighty proud to see what's happening here. A whole company changed because someone was willing to listen. Michael put his hand on Gerald's shoulder. And because someone was brave enough to speak up when he saw something wrong. 1 year after Michael's undercover visit to Trucktown, Foster Motors held a special celebration. All employees from every dealership across the country gathered in the company's headquarters for an important announcement. The large meeting hall was decorated with banners showing the company's new slogan, Foster Motors, where everyone gets the VIP treatment. Pictures of happy customers with their new cars and trucks covered the walls. There was a feeling of excitement in the air. Michael Foster stood on the stage, looking out at his employees. Next to him stood Gerald Thompson, now a familiar face to everyone at Foster Motors. In the front row sat Dave, the salesman from Trucktown who had once judged Michael by his clothes. Dave was now one of Foster Motors' top salespeople, known for treating every customer with the same respect. 1 year ago, Michael began. I walked into a competitor's dealership wearing old jeans and a baseball cap. I wanted to see how they treated regular customers. What I learned that day changed our company forever. He gestured to Gerald. This man taught me a lesson I'll never forget. His words stopped me in my tracks and started us on a new path. Gerald nodded humbly, a little embarrassed by the attention. Today, Michael continued, I have 3 big announcements to make. The room went quiet as everyone waited. First, Foster Motors has had the best year in our company's history. Sales are up 37% from last year. Customer satisfaction is at 95%, and we've opened 5 new dealerships. The room erupted in cheers and applause. People hugged each other and clapped. Second, Michael said when the noise died down, we've been named Dealership Chain of the Year by Auto Industry magazine. They specifically mentioned our commitment to treating all customers with equal respect. More cheers filled the room. It was a prestigious award that the company had never won before. But my third announcement is the one I'm most proud of, Michael said, his voice becoming more serious. Today, we're launching the Gerald Thompson Foundation. Gerald looked up in surprise. This was the first he had heard of it. This foundation, Michael explained, will provide training for customer service workers across all industries, not just car dealerships. It will teach the wisdom that Gerald and his father shared, that everyone deserves respect, regardless of their appearance or status. Michael turned to Gerald. With your permission, sir, we'd like to use your father's saying as the foundation's motto. The way you treat the person who you think can do nothing for you shows who you really are. Tears filled Gerald's eyes as he nodded yes. The room burst into applause again. Foster Motors will donate $1 million to start the foundation, Michael announced. And each year, we'll add 1% of our profits to help it grow. People stood up, applauding even louder. Many had tears in their eyes, moved by the tribute to Gerald and his father's wisdom. When the noise finally died down, Michael handed the microphone to Gerald. I never expected anything like this, Gerald said, his voice shaking a little. My daddy was just a school janitor. He never had much money or education, but he understood people. He knew that true wealth isn't about what's in your wallet. It's about how you treat others. Gerald looked out at the crowd. What Mr. Foster has built here is special. I've visited a lot of businesses in my life, but never one where every single person is treated with the same respect and honesty. He turned to Michael. Thank you for listening that day at Trucktown. Most big company bosses wouldn't have cared what an old man in work boots had to say. Michael smiled. It was the best business advice I ever got. After the ceremony, Michael and Gerald stood together, watching employees and their families enjoying the celebration. You know what's funny? Gerald said. I never did buy a truck from Trucktown. Michael laughed. Their loss was certainly our gain. Indeed it was, Gerald agreed. And to think, all this happened because his CEO was humble enough to disguise himself as a regular person and brave enough to make changes when he saw problems. Michael shook his head. No, it happened because you were brave enough to speak up when you saw someone being treated unfairly. One person's words can change everything. As if to prove his point, Dave walked up to them with a young couple. Mr. Foster, Mr. Thompson, I'd like you to meet my newest customers. They were at Trucktown earlier today and weren't happy with how they were treated. I told them about our different approach here. Welcome to Foster Motors, Michael said, shaking their hands. I promise you'll find things different here. We already have, the woman said with a smile. Your salesman treated us like we were the most important people in the world. Gerald nodded approvingly. That's because at Foster Motors, you are.